Welcome to Charts Today US Open. My name is David Linton, and today's edition for Tuesday, the 23rd of October, comes to you from London. And what a fall we're seeing across the markets. Asia was heavily down. Europe was down, and the US futures were pointing to markets heading lower. So we're seeing stocks really falling across the board. The dollar is a little bit weaker this today, but it's still holding its bullish trend on most time frames, and the euro also just sinking lower against that stronger dollar, so still bearish short term. Remembering this is my long-term weekly chart, my medium-term daily, and my short-term 60 minutes. So it gives me a view of multiple time frames as I click through the stocks. All this data coming to you from Thomson Reuters Icon in the Updata analytics system. The yen dollar sinking lower here, so a lot of money going to the yen as a safe haven. Sterling, we're seeing below that 130 level, despite the dollar actually losing a bit of ground. And against the euro, sterling still looking fairly weak. Against the Swiss franc, definitely looking weak. And against the Aussie dollar, it just seems the Aussie dollar is actually just falling away there. Bitcoin, little changed. Actually, having seen the gyrations of Bitcoin over recent months, the last week or two has actually been fairly sedate compared to stocks. So the volatility is not there. Looking at the S&P 500 index, we've opened down and we're now at 1.3%, 1.4% lower. The Nasdaq down 1.75% nearly. The number one thing with these charts, this is the S&P chart, is if we close at these levels today, we end up, with the lagging line shows us here, we end up making a lower low at the close. Now, certainly spending a few days below that level would be significant. We're still actually bullish on the long-term trend, but the medium-term trend is cracking now, and that, of course, will be the one that goes first. We are also seeing downside targets here. Going back to that S&P chart, on the 0.5% chart, we're seeing 11.5% downside. That is activated at the moment. So looking lower, we've got 10% lower on the 60-minute chart. So looks like the US market could easily go another 10%. Looking at the Nasdaq, we've got targets 3 and 8% lower, but no longer term targets, and significantly we're not making new lows here. So tech is yet to set that bar of making new lows. The Dow, however, is. We're not quite through on the medium-term chart on the Dow. The big caps have actually stayed up, but we are seeing, again, a potential downside of 12% if we make new lows below this level. So it's really the S&P that's looking worrying. And if we go to the Russell index, the 2000 top 2000 US stocks, we're 1.5% down, and that is where we're really seeing the significant sell-off. This is actually almost like a breadth indicator in itself. We're seeing the broader based shares falling, and we've got a downside target some 18% lower here on the broader market. The FTSE is down this morning. The futures are all down, of course. The FTSE is down 1% in the UK. Mid caps in the UK down 2%, reflecting that sell-off occurring more in the smaller cap stocks. The DAX down 2.3%, so we're really seeing almost like capitulation on that chart, and the CAC Quarante down 1.5%, so we are seeing pretty big falls. Asia overnight was pretty big falls as well. The Hang Seng was down 3%, and the Chinese market unwound more than half of its 4% rise yesterday, so still looking very bearish on Chinese stocks. Other markets down. That sentiment's filtering through to some commodities. We're seeing Brent crude down 2%, light WTI also down 2%, as you would expect. Nat gas being a bright spot, just up slightly, so we are seeing a little bit of a rise there. And gold, of course, also proving to be a bit of a bright spot as well. So we are just seeing the fact that we are just starting to move higher there as well, and gold really significantly activating this upside target on the 60-minute chart. So we now have 1258 as the next stop, 1302. Looks like gold is starting to turn the corner on that medium-term trend, so looking stronger. US 10-year yields sitting at about 3.13%, so we've fallen away on the yield today. Bond prices rising, German bonds also rising, and Italian yields. We've seen the EU punishing Italy, and so we're seeing quite a lot of activity there. Looking at the US Open, here we just see the sea of red across all the indices. This data now coming from Yahoo. That last screen either from Thomson Reuters Icon or Metastock Zenith. So whichever feed you're using, you can run into your Updata Analytics package. This is all now just this screen running on Yahoo finance data. So a great source of free data to use for your charts. So looking at the global markets, we see here this falling in, and here I've got a relative strength chart of the daily versus the Dow Jones set to 100 at the start of the year, an on-balance volume chart, so we can see the volume kicking away, and then the weekly and the daily and my point and figure charts. So looking at the Nasdaq 100, we've got some pretty big fallers at the moment. Packard down 8%. Seagate down 6%. So we are seeing across the board some pretty big falls, and any outperformance that's been we've seen in the year starting to unwind. Even Nvidia, which has been a star performer, is in the top four falls and relatively breaking that trend on the relative strength to new lows. So really significant there that we're seeing that. So for the moment, we've got downside potential to 156 on Nvidia. That's another 30% lower, and the medium-term trend breaking for the first time in a long time. Taking a look at the stocks in alphabetic order, we've got a very small number of stocks that are up. We can see Google is down nearly 2%. Apple is down nearly 2%. This really is a theme across the board. Amazon down nearly 3%, just holding its trend, only just. Again, if we make new lows, that would be pretty bearish. Facebook below is just down 1.5%. That 150 level is really quite critical now for Facebook. And if we look at some of the others, Tesla, a real surprise, up 6%. So we are seeing that stock bucking the trend, and Netflix down 2.2%. Microsoft down nearly 3%. So we're seeing the performance stocks really just unwinding a lot of those gains that we've seen this year. Taking a look at the Dow, we've got Caterpillar down 11%, profits warning there, really affecting Cat, and we're seeing basically a real sell-off, and that relative just diving on the market. We did have a target in place of 113. That's where we're headed. You can't really afford to ignore these targets. These prices all coming in live from Yahoo as I speak. Yeah, here we see 3M again falling away very heavily as well. So McDonald's is looking better, and Verizon came out with quite strong numbers today, so they're up 3%. So it's not all bad, and we see here nudging new multi-year highs. Very few stocks doing that. So Verizon is one stock that is bucking the trend, although it has underperformed most of this year, and it is only really on parity with the Dow, rising now. Last of all, a look at the S&P 500 index. We see here the best performers, Cadence up 9%, a couple up 6%, but very quickly you're into the sub 1% area. Meanwhile, if we go for the worst performers, you see here Waters Corporation, Packard, all sorts of companies in here, well over 5% down, so very significant indeed. Just keep an eye on that. Those markets closing below the previous lows. So on the S&P, certainly if we close these levels or lower today, that is a lower low, and we don't want to see too many days below there. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.